Yes, once again, you're most welcome to the Youth Roundtable edition of 2025. I'm going to be your host today. Masawi Ivan is my name. Today, I'm joined with a panel of ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me start our introduction. We have a youth leader from the National Resistance Movement. That is Madame Mary Tracy Atukunda. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Tracy, you can unmute and we proceed.
Thank you so much. My name is Mary Tracy Atukunda, a youth leader from the National Resistance Movement from Kabranjiranya Kabare, Konohamga, Ntungamo district, and I'm happy to be here.
You're most welcome, Tracy. It is a honor. We always appreciate you for taking time and joining us, especially in leadership spaces concerning the young people of this country. With me is Wandukwa Simon, a former Guild candidate, Makerere University, a pronoun activist for human rights and anti-corruption in Uganda. Simon, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Yes, my name is Wandukwa Simon. I am a third-year law student at Makerere University. Yeah, and like Ivan has ably
I think, Simon, you're having network issues. You'll have to improve so that we can get you more better as we proceed with the show. With me is Oprah. The second name gives me hard time to mention, but she will kindly. Oprah, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Nkalubo Oprah. I'm a second-year law student at Makerere University. I'm a youth leader, big on youth advocacy and empowerment, and I can't wait to delve into today's conversation. Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you're most welcome to the show. Our topic of discussion today is in relation to one of our public holidays. We did celebrate on Sunday 16th the Janan Luwum Day, which marked 48 years since 1977 when Janan Luwum was assassinated for standing on issues pertaining justice in Uganda. Looking at the state of current affairs in our country as well, we see that we do have a lot of issues. A lot of issues around our justice system that have affected our way of leadership, but our way of operation in terms of relating the role of religious leaders in the affairs of justice. Starting with you, Simon, given your experience as a youth activist of the Janan Luwum celebrations, given our history as a country, as Uganda. Simon? All right, Simon, you prepare to...
Yes. Can you get me now?
Yes, we can get you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ivan. And my fellow panelists. the discussion today is more like centered around the role of religious leaders in the fight for justice in our country, if I may phrase it in my understanding. And reference is being made to the hero Janan Luwum, the Archbishop, that was martyred on the same. Now, Janan Luwum left a legacy that this country and the future of Ugandans shall always live to celebrate and remember. Being an archbishop that stood up against the most notorious dictator at the time, Idi Amin Dada. When you look at the times, to comment about these injustices that were happening in the country, the abductions, the killings. A lot was going on in the country at the time, yeah, and for a religious leader to come out and comment about this, even when it is really their role, it also takes enough courage. So it is one of the things that you cannot take away from Janan Luwum as a religious leader, that it took a lot of courage to actually stand up against the dictator, that is Idi Amin Dada, but also fight against the injustice at the time. My attention is so much drawn to the statements of the president, Janan Luwum, when he says that Janan Luwum's spirit and courage inspired him a lot, to fight. Now, I do not want, I do not understand the contradiction in Janan Luwum's statements, because the exact things that Janan Luwum was fighting against are a manifestation of what we have today. The Idi Amin in name died, but the spirit of all that he did still lives with us today. There are still broad day abductions on streets today, that even when you hold a different opinion against this government, you are not as welcome. And those are some of the things that Janan Luwum was standing against. That we are at the moment faced with the trial of Dr. Kizza Besigye, who even today was in court. And I will restrain myself from commenting about the proceedings of court because it is not lawful. But you realize that this gentleman, Dr. Kizza Besigye, was abducted from Kenya. There was no arrest to that effect. Brought to Uganda, held incommunicado, and then after a lot of noise on social media and everywhere, is when they actually produced this gentleman to a court martial with accusations. Recently, 2 days ago, the head of mobilization in NUP, Chairman Nyaz, was abducted in broad daylight. Yeah, the 4 members of the National Unity Platform, EMC, were abducted yesterday.
Simon, allow me cut you short.
So Ivan, yes, as you cut me short, I want to bring to your attention, Ivan, that what Janan Luwum fought for has not left our society. We still have another Idi Amin Dada in our country, so we need as many Janan Luwum as possible. So I think I'll come back to comment on whether actually the religious leaders we have today can fit in the shoes of the Janan Luwum that we lost. But as a matter of fact, the devil we have right now is much stronger than the late Idi Amin Dada. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your contribution. Oprah, Simon sets a precedence and aligns us to a conversation of relevance and impact. Before we dig deep into maybe your perspective about the impact of Janan Luwum and the relevance of the celebration, what is the of our history for the 48 years since 1977 that Janan Luwum was massacred for reasons related to advocacy? Give us a history as a young youth leader, as a student, as a person who has more years to stay in this country. What do you take of the day itself?
Thank you very much. Well, Janan Luwum Day, essentially in the name and what it holds for our history, is one that speaks out towards freedom, it speaks out towards people standing up against oppression, standing up against ideals that really marginalize people. And what is ironical is that when this day happened back in 1977, and we look at the occurrences that led to Janan Luwum's death, and we compare that to what is happening in our times today, you will see that they are no different. When we look at extrajudicial killings that Janan Luwum used to speak about in his sermons and things like that, those are realities that we have in Uganda today. We have had so many people die in very weird circumstances, and they claim that there are investigations that go on, but really what happens is that these cases are buried into the ground and we never really find out. Families never really find out what happened to their people, what caused the death. We see people murdered in broad daylight. We see people being tortured in prison cells. Others have to end up going into exile because of the way the regime has treated them, and that is a reality that we are living with. And back in 1971, when Idi Amin came into power, those are things that used to happen. You know, it was like a song, death of people, constant threats, people would live in fear, in hiding. But then there was a man who, even with all the fear that was going around, he stood up for what he felt was right, for what he felt actually mattered. And at the end of the day, he was actually killed. So when we look at that narrative, and we had a whole in-between period where we felt Uganda was being liberated by President Museveni, peace was restored. We had a lot of economic growth, stability, peace. All these things were coming through, and people felt like this is the country that we deserve. This is post Idi Amin. This is something that we really thank God for. But now, seeing as to how events have shifted and the realities we are faced with now, it is important to ask that, is the day Janan Luwum still relevant to the circumstances as they happen today? If you look through the message that was delivered by the Prime Minister on behalf of the President of Uganda, you realize that he was quite off topic from the day Janan Luwum. He started with reminding people about the liberation struggles back in the bush. And when he was done with that, he went on to talk about the economic policies. Oh, we have Emyoga. Oh, we have PDM. Oh, our people have been able to liberate themselves economically. And then I ask myself, how is economic freedom related to the day Janan Luwum? How are the issues of the past related to Janan Luwum? Because we have current issues, we have issues that need urgent attention, issues to deal with death of people, issues to deal with arrest without trial, all these other different things. We have a lot of mismanagement by the prisons, by different arms of government, and all these things keep happening. All these things are unconstitutional, unlawful. These are things that keep Ugandans in bondage. And so many people are trying to talk about it. So many people, and their voices keep being shut down. Others keep being arrested. Others just keep disappearing from the scene. And that is the reality that we live in. But to live in days and times where the essence of Janan Luwum Day is not embraced and it is diverted, and yet we're even suffering with the same challenges, and our leaders, our president is not addressing these things, then really there's a problem in our status quo, and a lot needs to be changed. Thank you. I submit. Sorry, I don't know if you can. Ivan, I think you're muted. We can't quite hear
Yes,
you.
Oprah, thank you very much for the perspective shared. Coming to you, my sister, Mary Tracy Honorable, as I'm one of the Ugandans who belong to the Anglican faith that Janan Luwum subscribed to. And as the Anglican Church, His Grace the Archbishop read a message as I can read it here for you. As we celebrate Janan Luwum Day, let us embrace his courage and resilience in standing for truth and justice, said by His Grace Kazimba Mugalu, the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda. First of all, as a youth leader, what do you make of the day? But also, what do you make of the message that comes from the church? How have our values been affected or had influence by the religious fraternity in terms of seeing that we align ourselves with the message that he encourages, especially to us who use the bishop's significance as a tool of advocacy, but a symbolism of national unity and a symbolism of justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivan. It is a two-way question in any way. In today's world, religious leaders still have a crucial role to fight for justice, just as Janan Luwum. A country like Uganda faces social inequalities, it faces corruption, it faces a problem of human rights abuse, a problem of political oppression. The church and other faith institutions, some of them are an influence to these public opinions and guidance in communication. And I feel like most of our religious leaders have actually chosen different paths and different people to support just to secure. I don't think they have the mantle and the strength to stand in just as Janan Luwum has done. And this has affected many young people that they follow these religious leaders, yet these religious leaders are actually not fighting for justice, but they also have fear for their lives. So they've continued to show bias during their preachings and which I feel like it is not what we advocate for as young people, because we expect them to advocate for our human rights, talk about malpractices in elections, land grabbing, issues. It's not just about issues that are up there. I think it is even about, because there are many vices of land grabbing, gender-based violence deep down in our homes. And I feel like his Janan Luwum's fight was not about just justice, but even these small viruses that spread down into our homes. And I feel like religious leaders are not doing the most we expect from them, because we expect them to advocate for human rights, carry out peace talks between these different political parties, mentor the young people into leadership and into rightful leadership, condemn corruption and poor governance. Yet they are sometimes the people who actually bring it up, empower communities to social justice. A lot of activities we expect from religious leaders, but I think they just stop on putting small communications out there that are not going to help us, the young people, because we need practical leaders like Janan Luwum. Stand up, show us show us that you can fight for it, such that we are also, as the young people, inspired to do the most. Yes, my brothers are saying, and my sister said, we have a bigger virus. We have a bigger virus than Idi Amin Dada, but I feel like it's not just about the president of the country, not because I am in the national resistance movement, but I don't think it's just about the what has your LC1 councillor done? What has your political leader at your village? What have you contributed to fight whatever is happening? How have you portrayed justice? It doesn't begin with the president of a country, but us as the young people, what have we contributed in our communities? Do we even go to pray, to listen to these religious leaders and get to manifest their communication into our normal lives? So as I conclude in my submission, I feel like religious leaders have not gone an extra mile to deliver as much as Janan Luwum has done. Yes, they might not put their lives to die, but have they made the sacrifice that is worth it, to go to an extent that even us, the young people, we are picking up messages from them, not just writing messages on internet, not just portraying, but have they used their energy to at least do something to defend the country? And us, the young leaders, instead of a blame game, what have we done to contribute to our country? I beg to submit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mary Tracy Atukunda. Oprah, before I come to Simon, I'll read for you two paragraphs of the President's statement as read by the Prime Minister on Sunday. Luwum will be remembered as an influential leader not just for his spiritual position, but for his actions and unwavering commitment to change. The president highlighted that Luwum's martyrdom serves as a reminder of Uganda's history of extrajudicial killings and the national resistance movement's fight to restore democracy and the rule of law. As a country today, we are faced with the challenge of one of the national resistance movement fighters of that time of the 1980s, who was extradited. I don't know, who was arrested from Nairobi and has had a pending court case that was transferred for a court that was of incompetent powers to give a jurisdiction back to prison. Today was transferred to a competent court, and still the court was not ready to see that it gives its judgment. Going by the president's statement, especially highlighting the issue of martyrdom and contribution to rule of law, as a law student and as a law-abiding Ugandan, where does the current acts leave the sacrifice of
Okay, I didn't quite get the last bit. I got the part of where does this leave the sacrifices of Janan Luwum. All right, okay, let me continue. I think it is quite sad and very absurd that the people who embody the likeness of Janan Luwum, though they may not be religious in title, but there are quite a number of people who embody the actions of Janan Luwum. We have seen different people come out and voice the challenges in regards to the impunity that has happened with very many people in this country. We have seen very many people come out, talk against the atrocities that happen towards civilians, that happen towards everyday people in this country. And I feel when it comes to the day Janan Luwum, such people should be celebrated. That is where you have the likes of Dr.Kizza Besigye. That's where you have the likes of people like Kizza and so many other activists and so many other people who are trying to do who are trying to have their voice, who are trying to be the voice for so many marginalized people out there. And I believe that when the day Janan Luwum comes, these are some of the people that should be celebrated. But rather what happens is, I feel as though the president's statements have a lot of nostalgia. It's as though he speaks from the past and he is not alive to what the present looks like. He says, oh, Janan Luwum is celebrated because we should continue to celebrate him because he spoke out against extrajudicial killings. He spoke out against all these injustices and was a freedom fighter, a man of truth. But if you look in our country today, how many people are doing the same exact thing that Janan Luwum did? And what are the results that these people get? They get things like being imprisoned. They get things like being taken out to safe houses and staying there for long period of times without seeing their family. They suffer things like torture. They suffer things like having to go to exile because they are no longer safe in their own country. These are things that are happening to people who are like Janan Luwum. And I feel like right now it is just a day that that is in the calendar, and for one reason or the other, there must be something that he said. But if really it was at even the heart of the president, surely he should have even been there in person. But you see, these are times where the message or the day of Janan Luwum is so detached from what the reality holds. And so many people are doing what Janan Luwum is doing, but they are scared for their lives. They see death knocking as it knocked for Janan Luwum. And then we have our head of state who claims that these such actions are celebrated, yet when we look in our reality, it's not really something that he celebrates. So I feel like it's being double-sided. There are a lot of double standards being played, and we deserve better as Ugandans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Simon was to take on the very question. We have to listen from Simon because he's taking on the very question. Just a minute.
Kindly rephrase the question for me, please. I have been on and off. My apologies. My network is not there.
Considering the president in his letter states the contribution of Janan Luwum's selflessness to rule of law and democratic principles. As a Ugandan today, especially who has been at the forefront of fighting for human rights or fighting for restoration of rule of law, give us the gap. Paint for the viewers and the listeners of our show a gap between the reality and the letters. Secondly, I had given my sister Oprah the current case that really sets a bad precedence for our history to still be having people who are arrested, but still justice still being delayed in terms of execution. Shed more for us about this gap. Where does this leave the sacrifices of Janan Luwum, but where does this put religious leaders in their contribution towards advocating for justice in the country?
Thank you so much, Ivan. Now, Ivan, allow me. I will read a tweet. I reposted this tweet. It is from a gentleman called, and he says, on the Lumu Day, he says, I waited for just a minute. Okay, the gentleman says he was in church and waited for the priest to comment about the arrests that have been happening, and maybe the case about Dr.Kizza Besigye. So he says, I waited for the priest to say something about the plight of Dr. Kizza Besigye on this Janan Luwum Day. Instead, he told stories of phone thieves in church. I withheld my offertory for the first time. Let the government feed them. Now, this tweet in particular, I found a lot of interest in it because it speaks more of the reality of what is happening in the country today. First, I want to just give you a small gap that is between the
Simon, I don't know whether it is me not getting Simon very well or he's struggling with network issues, but I see he's rejoining. Yes, as we wait for Simon, Simon, are you back?
Sorry, Ivan. Can you get me now?
We can. Thank you. You're most welcome.
Sure. So we've had leaders like the late Cyprian Luanga, you know, and the Archbishop of the Orthodox Church, the late Luanga. These are leaders, the religious leaders who in their time as religious leaders continued to, raise up their voices against such injustices, and you would really see that it would disorganize the mind and the conscience of persons like Luanga, like Muzata, when things are not actually going right. But even with these same people that have always come out beyond, I mean, past the Lumu day or the Lumu time, that their death is a mysterious one, and I will restrain myself from commenting so deep into that, but it's a reality that even that death is one that has no clear report of what exactly happened. Now these are realities that religious leaders now more seek to be safe.
Simon, you can proceed. Hello. I think Simon is struggling with network. Simon, do we still have you? Maybe let's give him a minute so that we can draft to the next questions. Simon, you can still go on. We were still putting up a case that maybe your network disappeared. Simon.
Yes, Ivan, I don't know if I'm clear now. My apologies for the network.
You're now more clear. You can proceed.
Yes, so like I was telling you, Ivan, now the role of religious leaders is still so much needed in times like this, when we are faced with a lot of fear, with a lot of impunity, but with more threats. When you were giving an example of in your question, you talked about the arrest, but I think in the current times, even the word arrest is an understatement. For example, Dr. Kizza Besigye was not arrested. You and I, the Kenyan authorities have come out to make disclaimers that they do not have any authorization whatsoever of the arrest of the gentleman. Um, the same things that are happening even just yesterday and today, are not arrests. That when you do not come out and shout that, hey, you took my person, I am not seeing them, they will disappear for good. There are gentlemen in Lozera, the likes of Bobby Young, of Machetes, they are there, they've been there for time, and there is need by beyond the religious leaders, by the judicial system, to have a speedy trial and provide justice for these people that are arrested on for political reasons. Because the challenge we have today in our country is that politics has eaten up every institution, every system of government. That the politics has eaten up even the church. That is why you'll find the likes of pastors like Bujingo mocking people who have genuine challenges by the government. And so as long as we still have religious leaders who will rather want to take sides with the oppressor and mock those who are being oppressed, such the Janan Luwum Day does not make meaning. As long as we have the same people who say Janan Luwum inspired them to fight and bring freedom to this country, and yet they're the same people currently taking away the same freedom, subjecting people to the same kind of problems that existed then the Janan Luwum Day is no longer relevant. As long as we have religious leaders who are self-seekers and apologists of the regime, and all they want to do is to keep safe and get money for themselves, or maybe survive longer with their ministries, that is not safe for the country. So there is need to revisit the entire the whole thing behind the whole fight of Luwum, and if we want to give this the relevance that it deserves. I do not want to see the death of a very courageous gentleman like Luwum go to waste because we have no reason. I mean, because we cannot fight to uphold that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon. You do raise a point of wastefulness. You do raise a point of impact, but you also do give a statement on your perspective of the status. Honorable Mary Tracy, I'll come to you again because, far as I know, you speak for the young people, especially ladies in your community, but also of the party that you intend to you serve, and which is the ruling party. Going by the precedence set by maybe your fellow panelists and our history, where do you think, as a country, we have struggled and not learned our lessons, especially of advocacy, but also our lessons of seeing that, as it may be difficult as it is, that a strong justice system is dependent on many factors in society and it can't be built in less than 50 years, maybe say, but we are supposed to have made certain stretches, we had certain leads 50 years as we come 50 years later after the death of Janan Luwum. But as you've listened from Simon and my sister Oprah, there still shows that we are still lagging in the lessons we have so far picked and in the progress that we have so far made in regards to what preamble that leads to setting up a Janan Luwum Day. They both disagree with General Museveni's letters, but also disagree with the current state of affairs in line with the impact of the contribution of religious leaders to justice. So where does this leave us as a country, especially the young leaders? What do you think we have not done enough? But I want you to stress more on your point where you said youth leaders, councillors, and the community also all have a role to play. Maybe most of us we are not doing enough that we may do more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivan. First of all, I would want to begin with disagreeing with my brother, Simon, because, okay, that tweet, someone tweeted it, but it doesn't mean they are right. I really honestly don't expect a church leader to stand out and talk about, yes, Dr. Kizza Besigye. I don't support FDC, but I was touched with whatever is happening. But you don't really expect a Catholic Church religious leader, for example, to stand up and talk about such an incident that is happening. It is not part of his preaching. Yes, he might talk about it, but indirectly. You really don't expect him to openly, you know, discuss a thing of a kind. That means there are different people that have come to this house of worship. You really don't expect them to start listening to politics. People are not interested. People of different, setting, who would not really be in interest of any. So I really don't think that really this certain gentleman should have been disappointed because they didn't come to church to listen to politics. And as I was saying earlier, I think we should not blame these leaders who are there, because over the years we've seen young people join these political positions. Even who have been in opposition, they have really not impacted any change. You will want to you go back maybe to my village in Yakavare, and people do not have hospitals, people do not have water, electricity, and no one is standing out to say anything. And a young gentleman already there in Kampala shouting the president should leave. I feel like we have left behind our responsibilities as young people to fight for the few things and actually copy Janan Luwum and contribute to our small societies, because these small structures are the ones that will lead to the big structures. Whatever you have learned in these political spaces, have you gone back to your home area? Have you educated some young people? Have you mentored young people? Such that these small efforts can add up to the bigger energy, other than standing out and you're criticizing whoever said what, whichever speech said what. If they're doing wrong, I feel like change starts with us. If they're doing wrong, so what have you added? What impact? I think I would appreciate a youth who would stand up and say, I have done this and this and this, but I think the country has failed me, other than beating around the bush. So I think we have forgotten about the structures. We have forgotten about our churches back there, and these small structures of the youth that are going to come in the upcoming election. I feel like that is where we should start from. Educate the young people. Tell them this and this is not going on well in our country. What can we add? We should not despise the small work that has been done, yet we have not contributed anything to our country. And I continue to stress that young people, we still have a lot to do, because our generation is the one that is upcoming to contribute a lot to our country. Because yes, the old ones have done whatever they have done. Maybe they have set back the country, maybe they have brought the country forward. Me as a person, I feel like a lot has been done. Surely we cannot say Uganda would not be where it is if that was. You people might count the president as countless, but a lot has been done. That's why we are here. We cannot call it inevitable, but what have we contributed? And if our new generation is coming, what more effort are we going to put in to support each other, regardless of the political party, regardless of the ethnicity, regardless of our places where we come from? Am I able to support my different brothers from different places, to make sure that we contribute to our country for a furthermore move? It should not be about criticizing each other. And I feel like religious leaders as well, I feel like they are setting us back, because a number of them, they stand up and they are giving statements that do not inspire the young people. I feel like, yeah, there is a lot to do for religious leaders that they have not impacted to the country, to fight for justice, to fight for all those voices I've been talking about. But I feel like still we have a very big role as young people to contribute to our country, other than throwing stones to the leaders that are there, because we are the leaders in the next generation. If we keep on blaming others, what will we contribute to our country? What will we put in forward to make sure that things are on the straight line? Other than blaming each other, I really don't think it will work. But as young leaders, are we working together? What are we contributing to our country? Before you look forward to others, what have you done as a single person, as a village, parish, sub-county, as a district? I beg to submit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mary Tracy. Simon, you'll allow me to call you back before I go to Oprah. There is a contradiction of an issue of young people. We have not done enough. It questions me to the environment, questions me of the nurturing of young people. First of all, has the nurturing been to point? But also, secondly, does the environment support advocacy? Does the environment support a space that young people have a chance to contribute, but also their voices are respected? I think yes. Over to you,
Yes,
Simon.
yes. Thank you so much, Ivan. Now, I want to first start with Tracy's statement that she does not expect a religious leader to comment about politics in church, and people have come to church. There are some of them are not interested in politics, but I want to bring to her attention that what caused the death of Janan Luwum was not spiritual matters, but rather political reasons. And the political reasons were that Janan Luwum, a religious leader or an archbishop at the time, was standing up to fight against the oppression, the injustices, the wrongs that the government at the time was doing. I'll just refer her back to the Bible. You see, in the Old Testament, when you read stories of the Old Testament, God used to send prophets to check the political leaders, the religious, the kings at the time. You know, the people like the Pharaoh were constantly received messages and warnings from God through religious leaders like like Moses and whatnot. So even when you properly analyze from the Bible, from the religious readings, you understand that it is the role of the religious leaders. It is incumbent on them to always guide political leaders when they think what they are doing is against humanity. Now, I do not think that validates my sister's statement when she thinks or says that she does not expect religious leaders to comment about politics in church. I think it is just very important that they do not look the other side when the people they want to preach to, the message of God, are dying simply because mankind or a fellow human being is killing them. Now, back to your question of what have we done? What is really there to do, Ivan, if I may ask? Because I think most of the things have been done. The sensitization, that
I think before even you ask what have you been, sorry to interject,
Yeah, sure.
but as you respond to that question, first bring us to the perspective. Is the environment support, or what feedback does the environment also give? Because
Uh,
spaces are also key.
I will give you this as I'll give you this example. I think the most recent example, when we had the call among our fellow youths of this country, and said, hey, as Ugandans of this country, as the youths of this country, we should stand up against corruption. Yeah, we've had the president launch different campaigns against corruption. We now have more than one agency handling the same thing, corruption. But then we have corruption flying over the country, and I'll not get deep into that because it may divert my conversation. But just the most recent example, the anti-corruption protest led by the youths, and the president of this country goes on TV and says, we shall crush them. They are coming against the original NRA. We shall crush them because they are supported by foreigners. You get? So this is the society we live in, that you can do whatever you want as long as you do not come up to oppose the status quo in space. You remember that many of us were arrested. We're over 100 youths in prison. Uh, as for my case, me, I'm still reporting to court because my case is still ongoing, still just for standing up against corruption, and there was nothing absolutely wrong with it. That you just come on the street holding your placard and saying corruption should end. Now, what do you want a youth to do beyond standing up? Because we are so much incapacitated. The system that would help us to check on all these injustices are not operational. The police is not operational. The army is not operational. The justice system takes its time. Every available institution that would actually help to push the fight to the next level is not operational. As long as it is not politically engineered, it cannot serve your interest. So we have done sensitization among our fellow youths, at least that we still do to and maybe that is what I would implore us as fellow youths to keep doing, that we should keep educating our fellow youths from deep down at the grassroots level, first of all, to know what their rights are. You get? So that people can know where their rights start and end. So that Janan Luwum does not sound, or the NRM friends of like Tracy do not seem to sound that even us having the privilege to live in peace is an offer by Janan Luwum to us. It is not. It's a right. We must enjoy it. We're not supposed to receive it as a token and therefore clap for him because we are live. No, those are some of the things that we own as our rights. So we need to sensitize ourselves more to understand what our rights are. We need to sensitize ourselves more. We need to charge ourselves more to take up action whenever we are called upon. There is need to build a network amongst ourselves as the youths to hold our leaders accountable. Our leaders pose in a way that they seem not to actually be providing services to us, but rather doing us a favor to lead us. And that is the problem with our country today, that those holding power thinks they are giving us a favor by holding the power. And when you want to hold them accountable, you are handled in a manner that does not befit that. So we need to hold our leaders accountable. We need to fight for our rights. We need to stand up and comment about everything wrong and take up action against it. So moving forward, I think there is need among us as youths like Doctor has constantly said, Dr. Kizza, that we need to take up all action that is non-violent and fight against all this mess that is in the country. You know, at least we shall keep clapping our hands because we have woken up alive, you know, and thank President Museveni for that, and which I think it is so absurd and below the belt. Thank you.
Oprah, thank you, Simon. Oprah, you'll allow me invite you to give your assessment of your fellow panelists, but also your contribution. I know we are questioning to find out the relevance of the religious sector, both all Muslim, Anglican, Catholic, Seventh Day. We have seen that it is also on record that some of these church leaders have been so pivotal at our governance and justice system. But the key question that maybe as I would like you to direct us as viewers and panelists for the show is our learning spirit. We have really had enough education improve that maybe we can really appreciate the government that education levels and literacy levels in the country have increased. But why is it that if there is a sector that is bringing up a lot of questions about their growth has been the justice sector? In 1987, 89, we did have a Minister of Energy who was one of the strongest opposition leaders in the 70s called Rutankome Kaira, who passed on in the after being assassinated while staying with one of the friends, Henry Nkanji. In 1987, the Minister of State for Internal Affairs was Dr. Kizza Besigye, and the cabinet minister was Semogerere, who is also the late and former DP president. These are people who were once at the heart of government. They had the chance to contribute towards seeing that we achieve. The current governance system has been brought up by all Ugandans, I can say. Whether you look at the opposition, you'll find even a youth today had a grandfather who was maybe in NRM in the 80s and contributed to the peace or bringing of the NRA government. Where do you think, as a country, looking at the perspective that Honorable Mary Tracy pointed out that as a youth, maybe we have not contributed enough, but Simon still urges the space, but also some people being entitled with feeling that the country is a family affair or they are gods of a kind in offering see that justice prevails. But also, Oprah, I will request and beg you honestly, maybe to also shed light about could it be that the dependence or independence of also these religious institutions is a key to why they have not done enough in contribution towards justice? You can take it from there.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start off with Honorable Mercy Tracy's contribution towards her assertion that young people haven't really taken the lead or done particular things to foster justice or to foster improvements in their local areas. And you see, where we have a country where responsibility is being shifted from leaders, elected officials, into the hands of civilians, then you know we are having a serious problem. you know that really the end of all things is near. Because if we have elected leaders, but then the burden now has to go to a common man to try to bring about change wherever they come from, then it's one of the characteristics of a failed state. But even then, because that is the sort of society we live in, we have been forced to do these things. And Mary asserts that all youth have not done enough, etc. But I feel like youth in their perspectives are different. There are so many ways to kill a cow. There are so many ways, there are so many means to one end, right? So the things that Mary would do would not be the things I would do or the ones that Simon would do. But if you clearly see what young youth leaders are doing today, everyone is doing their part in building their country. And of course, everyone has where they come from. Personally, I am from the Central region, so of course, what I do is centered where I live. So different people take different approaches, and some people will do activism, like people like Simon will take to the streets and do activism and speak out and do all those different kind of things. When you come to a person like Oprah is more policy oriented. I would not want to go to the street and shout and then leave when I'm uncertain of whether what I've done will produce results or not. I like to get the work done, provide solutions, make policies, and present them before people who actually have the power to make these policies. So that's one thing I've done in regards to capacity building, whether it's regards to education for children or issues that deal with health sector for young people. Those are areas that I have been so key in drafting policies and all these things. But when you draft policies and you show the problems that are happening, you show what has been done and how to improve it, and then you have to go through an entire bureaucratic process and you don't get answers, and the people you're supposed to talk to are not even, they're not even aware to these realities. It's really a problem. It really is. And that's something that personally I have faced in regards to what I can do on my side. But then there are also people who do things like NGOs. They are giving out, young people are giving out books, young people are giving out mentoring skills. But you see, if you live in a system whereby you have provided, let's say, books and pads to girls today, and then they go to school and there's no teacher, and then they go to hospitals and there are no drugs, then it's like your work it's like you're just giving out things, but really the impact is limited and hindered, and the role that you're even playing is not one that you're supposed to be doing, because all these things are supposed to be catered for with your taxes. These things are supposed to be catered for with the leaders that you put into power. But where now the situation shifts, it is really one that's problematic. And when we talk of religious leaders, I feel there are some religious leaders actually in this day and age who have stood up against injustice, who have been very vocal in regards to freedom of the people. We have seen them on our television. And those religious leaders do exist, and I would like to applaud them. They have been vocal on many of these things and calling for peace and calling for oneness in the country and among the different stakeholders. Those leaders do exist. But then we also have religious leaders who are completely silent about the matter. They go ahead and ask for tithe, go ahead and preach different things, but they don't really talk about the issues that affect our country. And then there's another cluster of religious leaders that are already corrupt and have been placed there, by different people in government, and they're just there to serve the aims of government, and they're not really involved in issues to deal with freedom of people, or even issues to deal with making sure that their congregation are better people. So those things are secondary to them. We have all those types of religious leaders at the end of the day. But I feel like at this point, it is a call for everyone to do what they can do, because the truth is that we have gone past the time to just sit back and wait for a miracle to happen, because I do not think it's going to happen anytime soon. And because the goalposts have shifted, it is time for everyone to do what they can. Let's not downplay anybody's work. Let us do what we can do, serve our people how we can do, how in the best way we can. I know hindrances exist and will continue to exist, but if we can play our role, I'm sure that this God that we serve will surely see us through. Thank you.
For God and my country, thank you very much, Oprah, for your good submission. In our last segment, our last question that will be attached to also our parting statement, since we started our show and we have 10 minutes to closure. My good friend, Honorable Mary Tracy Atukunda, you'll allow me come back to you as we conclude to our religious leaders, because governance can never be separated from our religion. Is why you see that even around the globe we have states that are Islamic, we have states that are Christian. Governance or leadership is God driven, and the church can never liberate itself from its role in being a reflection. We saw religious leaders who stood bold and came up about Dr.Kizza Besigye issue. A part of them was the Archbishop. We have seen Catholic churches where we have seen some religious leaders also contribute towards seeing that they take the Luwum spirit of advocacy as a church, as a reflection to society. Where do you think as a country we should improve to see that first the church is independent, but second the church is effective in its contribution towards good governance? The same question will cut across for all of us, as we shall also attach our parting statement, since we shall be closing at 4 exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to clarify some of my points. I think uh, my fellows did not understand me clearly, because giving an example, sometimes when someone has maybe like abused you or done something to you, or like offended you in some way, when they wake up tomorrow and they say they are like supplying pads to the girls in Wakiso or something, you will still feel like they're not doing enough. You will still feel like whatever they're doing is not good, is not enough, is not real, just because maybe you had your personal issues with them. And I think, us being 20 years, I really don't think we should predict things that have happened 50 years before us. Uh, there are things that can change, surely. There should not be a wall for us to make judgments or decisions for things that have happened before us, yet we have just lived for a few years. So I just wanted to clear the air before I start on my point. Um, just to continue, I feel like religious leaders, of course, their predecessor was murdered. Sometimes they do not want to follow suit of whatever happened. So sometimes fear for their lives, because not that every one of us is brave to stand out and they're ready to be killed. I really don't think I'm part of the above. A part of the above category. So I think some of them really are afraid of their lives. So they resolve to only communicating in parables, maybe saying a few things that are connected and sticking to the church, other than involving in political struggles they know they cannot handle, otherwise they would be murdered at the end of the day. Not by only political leaders not by political leaders who are in leadership, even the ones for opposition. I feel like religious leaders should really step up their game and do at least better than they are doing. Yes, they are at least doing something, But I feel like they should step up and do a little bit better to emulate Janan Luwum. And still, I stick to my point that I'm not saying that someone said, I said young people are not doing what they're supposed to do. No, I said we still have a lot to do. As I already said, in the 20 years, I feel like there is a lot. There are very many years we have to at least add on a milestone on what we have done and add on the big portion that the president of this country has contributed to us. I feel like we can still add on more and do better and at least
Very
start
quickly, as we run out
on.
of time, I want your perspective, Judge.
Your network is cutting. I'm not hearing you, Ivan.
I wanted to get a perspective of your independence of some of these religious institutions, although I see you gave an elaborate issue about some having the fear, but I wanted maybe from the perspective of independence. Uh, but since we are short of time, I want to appreciate you for your contribution. Thanks for always joining us on the show. So let's have Oprah. We are left with 5 minutes. So you will have 2 minutes, maybe to give your parting statements. But basically, my question is around how can religious institutions improve their effectiveness towards liberating their own independence? Because as they are duly constituted, they will always be reflection of society. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's important for religious institutions to stick to why they are there. They are there to better communities, to better the people that live in them, to instill hope and peace in the people in those different communities and societies. And I believe if they continue to do that role, then we shall be we shall be moving towards the right direction, because you realize that the challenges that are facing people in society are these very same issues of injustice, of corruption, of things that are very unconstitutional, very unlawful. You know, you have issues of land grabbing by diplomatic people in government, and these are things that are affecting a common man. You find issues where people are being chased off their land, and then they've been there for a very long time, but all these are acts of the state. And these are the realities that people live in. And I believe as religious leaders in such communities, they should really be vocal and speak out against such things, because most people subscribe to religious sects. And if we are to have sensitization in regards to who is the best leader to be voted, who can easily bring about democracy and able representation and service delivery in government, it is religious leaders have a pertinent role to play, because so many people subscribe to these religions, so many people subscribe to these spaces. So if we have religious leaders actually being vocal about the challenges that are happening in the country and advising the people that as they pray, let them be keen on who they vote into power, let them be keen to make sure that they make these leaders accountable in whatever way is possible, but also that they advocate that us as different individuals should play our role in our country building. I think that if they take that approach, we can have a better country. Otherwise, sitting in long hour sermons or ties and things that are quite far-fetched from our reality will not in any way help this nation, especially when 2026 comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oprah. Lastly, Simon, I would like to give you the last segment and last statements of the show. Your say on the independence of religious institutions, but also your message to all people who are really in need of effective justice, where the religious leaders have a contribution in demanding for equality, but also human rights in this country. One of them is Dr. Kizza Besigye. What message do you leave for all people of such state in society?
Thank you very much, Ivan, and my fellow panelists who have taken off time to have a deeper discussion into our rights, but also the role of the religious leaders. Now, for me, my parting shots are on which a reality really. We see whenever President Museveni is launching a program or any project, in his speech, he never forgets to call upon religious leaders to help push or encourage the masses to embrace the government projects. Oftentimes, when he's launching his campaigns or when we're nearing political season, he does the same. Now, for us to have a conversation and want to differentiate or create a difference between the two, that religious leaders should only stay in religion and do not comment about politics, is actually a myth. It is not a reality. So it is, and it will only confirm one thing, that then Janan Luwum's death is one that was in vain. So I want to call upon religious leaders to take on the fight, or just pick it on from where Janan Luwum stopped. Keep the struggle on. The Ugandans still have challenges that happened in the 70s in the Amin regime. Those
Simon,
are still a reality up to now. And I want to also call upon us as the people of this country to be alert and fight for our rights. Finally, for our friends and fighters in prison, we shall overcome. The struggle is still on. Even us who are outside are in capture. Many of those that we talk about, some of them actually live in capture of fear. But the only way to overcome that is to stand up and raise our voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Honorable Mary Tracy Atukunda. Thank you, Honorable Oprah Nkalubo, for joining us. To our viewers, thank you very much for joining us on the Youth Roundtable. We apologize for the delays that were experienced because our show is always at 2 p.m. every Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you once again next Wednesday, same time, same place. Have